I'm Victoria Pearson, but you can call me V. And if you regularly follow my daily gratitude shorts on YouTube, you will have been aware that a couple of weeks ago I had what most people would describe as a pretty bad day. I'm going to tell you all about that now because there just wasn't enough time to tell you everything that happened in a 1 minute short. But also I'm going to tell you how I turned that bad day around and took some really positive stuff from it. Okay, so again, if you're a regular watcher, you will know that Tuesday is pole class day. I love a Tuesday evening. It's where I get to go and just not be mum or anything else, just be myself, have some fun, do some exercise that doesn't feel like exercise, and rack up my achievements on the new tricks that I can do. I absolutely love going to pole class. So on the Tuesday in question, I get ready to go pole class and I set off on time. And I realised that my favourite route to get there, which has been closed for months and months and months, is now open. But nobody else realises that it's open yet. It must have only just reopened. And so there's absolutely no traffic on there. It was brilliant. And so I drove my favourite, most direct route there, in no traffic, listening to my music. Everything's happy. And I arrive really, really early because of that. And so I sit in my car and do my Duolingo, because I do have something like a 700-day streak on Duolingo or something now. If I miss it one day and go back to zero, I'm going to be absolutely gutted because I've never stuck at anything for so long. So I'm sitting in the car park, I'm doing my Duolingo, wasting a bit of time scrolling Twitter, and then I start to notice that we're about 15 minutes before class. Not everybody arrives very early for class, but one or two of the regulars usually do, and they're not here yet. This has happened to me before. So I jump onto my phone and I check my emails. And an hour or so before I left the house, I had an email to say that class had been cancelled. Lesson learned, right? This is the second time that's happened. From now on, I'm checking the emails just before I leave the house every single Tuesday from now on. Anyway, I thought it's not too bad. The car probably needed a little drive about anyway, because I don't use it that often. I only really use it for getting to pole class and like driving the kids to school if the bus doesn't turn up. So it wasn't a big deal. The car needed a little ticking over anyway. And so I pull out of my space and I start to drive out of the car park. And there were two cars sort of parked next to each other, next to where I'm driving down, and the person in the second space couldn't see me because of the car in the first space, and so reversed out quite quickly, actually. I slammed my brakes on. Emergency stop. Managed to stop in plenty of time. I was pleased with that because it was a car full of children. And so I was quite glad that we hadn't had an accident. That person drove off. But because I had emergency stopped in second gear, my car stalled. It does that quite a lot. It's quite old. It's a 17-year-old car. Kind of on its last legs. A little bit held together with duct tape and hope, but I've always called her Old Reliable because she has never let me down before, until this day. I wasn't bothered by stalling. I've stalled a million times in that car before. I'm very happy about getting myself back out of a stall, which I attempted to do, and my car just didn't respond. I took the key out completely, out of gear, handbrake on, take the key out, we'll start from scratch, all over again, wouldn't start. Wouldn't even make a little coughing noise like it was trying to start. And then all my warning lights are going off and it says engine immobilised. And I think, it's never said that before. Now at that moment, I happened to notice somebody else that normally goes to my class, who also didn't check her emails before she left the house. And I know that she's quite into cars. And so I asked her, had she ever seen that kind of warning light before? And she said she thought she had, but that I would need somebody to come and clear the fault code for me to be able to get the car moving again. She then helped me to push my car into a space so that it wasn't just being an obstruction in the middle of the car park, because that was my initial panic, was I am in everybody's way and I hate it. And so pushed my car into a space. Now I've got a 7-seater car. Us two ladies pushing it was hard work. The next day when I woke up, my neck, my shoulder, my back were all really hurting. I don't understand why this stroppy shoulder was hurting when I was pushing the car with this shoulder, but here we are. It is my dodgy shoulder. I am a couple of days after it now, and it does feel a lot better. I've still got range of motion there, and so I'm hoping that it's just that my muscles are tensed up and that it'll be fine in a couple of days and I'll be able to go back to class. If that's not the case, you will have already heard about it on my daily shorts because I will have been complaining about that. But hopefully, touch wood, everything will be grand there and it'll be fine in time for me to go back to my next class. I'm not actually going next week, so it'll be the week after anyway, and I think it'll be lots better by then. Anyway, we've pushed it into the space. This girls asked me, do I need help to get home? And I sort of said no, because I want to stay with my car. So the thing is, I'm in a car park at this point that charges by the hour. And if I go off and leave my car, I don't know when I'm going to be able to come back, and it could end up charging me an absolute fortune, maybe even more than my car's worth in the end. And so I said, no, I'm going to stick with my car and try and sort things out. I decided I was going to Google how to fix this problem, and I went to do that, but then I realised I had run out of data. So I've got 3 phone calls on my package, so I rang up my husband, asked him to Google it for me. That wasn't the best thing for me to do, really, because he was stuck at home with all of the children and he can't drive anywhere. There was absolutely no way he could rescue me, and I probably made him panic for no reason, really. But he did a Google and he said to me, I think I've found a way, the step-by-step little way to reset your immobiliser so that you can come home again. And it involved arcane car magic, where you would put your key in the door and half turn it one way and wait 60 seconds and half turn it the other way and wait 60 seconds, stand on one leg and make a sacrifice to the gods, and then your car would work again. And so I did all those things. Sorry to the goat that we had to sacrifice. It started. And I was like, excellent, problem solved. I said to my husband, I'm hanging up on you now. I'm coming straight home because I daren't let this stutter again. And I drove merrily out of the car park and across the empty roundabout, and everything was grand. And then ahead of me was a very busy roundabout. And at this point, we are in the middle of rush hour. And so there is a lot of traffic. And I knew it was coming up. So I went really, really slowly on the approach to it, annoying everybody around me. Everyone's honking at me, even though I've got hazards on because I'm a bit worried. Crawl up to the roundabout. And I have to stop because there's traffic, and I stopped so gently, you could wipe a baby's bum with it or something, and I still stalled again, and all my warning lights came on, and my car started shouting at me that the engine was immobilised. And it was the worst possible place, really, because my nose was out over the roundabout, which was very, very busy. And even though I've got hazard lights on, everybody's blaring their horns at me. Absolute nightmare situation. I start to feel quite panicky. But somehow a combination of me stamping as hard as I could on the accelerator while trying to turn the ignition key and saying every swear word that I knew at my car somehow got her going again. Did you hear my tummy then? I'm hungry. So that somehow got my car going again, and that was brilliant. I managed to drive off the roundabout. I could feel that it was trying to lose power. We're sort of going like this as we go along. And I'm thinking, I'm so glad that my 8-year-old isn't in the car because he would be panicking at this point. But I managed to get off the roundabout. Brilliant. I could still feel that the car was losing power though. And maybe 200 yards ahead of me, there was a petrol station. So I thought, I'm going to pull in there because right now I am on a dual carriageway. 70-mile-an-hour limit. People flying past. It's getting dark. I was worried that I was going to crash, or be crashed into, I should say. And just as I was thinking, hopefully I can make it to the petrol station, my car sputtered once more and just completely died. The only thing that would respond in any way were the hazard lights. And of course now I'm on a very busy road. I'm blocking the main lane of traffic. People are having to go in the overtaking lane to go past me. Everyone, again, blaring their horns at me like I have just decided to stop my car in the most dangerous place I can think of and admire the grass verges or something. Anywho, at that point, I thought, I'm actually going to burst into tears. Now I can feel them welling up inside me. And because I'm in this dangerous spot on the road, I can't get out and try the magic key thing that my husband had told me on the phone again, because I'm going to get splattered by somebody going 70 miles an hour as it's getting dark. And just as I was thinking to myself, I don't know what to do about this situation, I do have breakdown cover, but to access my breakdown cover, you have to go onto the app or the website, and I had no data. I didn't know what to do with myself. I can feel, you know, when you can feel tears welling up in you. And I'm thinking to myself, you can't have a breakdown right now because you and the car cannot be doing that at the same time. It's not going to help. And so I did what I do on my daily gratitude, right? I could feel it welling up. And so I closed my eyes for a second and I took a really deep breath. And that didn't help the situation at all, right? But it made me feel a bit more steady about it. And as I opened my eyes after taking that big deep breath, I saw this battered white van pull onto the grass verge next to me. It was like doing that I had summoned a guardian angel or something. It was fantastic. The person in that car opened their window, tried to speak to me, but my electric windows were shut and they wouldn't open. And so I had to climb over into the passenger seat so that I could get out of the car. And I must have been completely incoherent to these men that had stopped before me. I don't know what's happening. But they decided to take charge of the situation, which was so, so lovely of them. So these two old boys, Patrick and Michael, they got out, they took my key, they start trying to fix my car for me. Nobody popped the bonnet at any point during any of this. By the way, we tried smacking the key and rubbing the key and turning the key while stamping on the accelerator like I had done before, and obviously none of that worked, right? But I was just felt so much safer knowing that there were some people there to help me out, and I wasn't just stuck in traffic like that. And so at that point, I said to them, I'm just going to give my husband a quick ring, let him know why I'm not home yet, because he would have been worried because he knew that my car was being dodgy. And so I gave him a quick call to let him know what was going on, and then I turned around and my car was gone. And I looked and these two old men were pushing the car down the road while trying to get it sort of started. It was so dangerous, to be honest, but I'm so grateful that they did. They couldn't get the car started that way, but they did manage to push it down to the petrol station for me so that at least we weren't sat in traffic. And they did it so quickly, I had to run along the grass verge to catch up with them. And yeah, it took me ages to get the car going, but they just moved it like it wasn't a thing. It's fine. And so we get into the petrol station and we're theorising about what it could be, but it's very obvious that none of us know what it could be. And so they asked me what I wanted to do and then helped me to push my car to an area of the petrol station where it wasn't going to be in anybody's way and wasn't going to cause an obstruction for the fuel tankers that would come in overnight and things like that. And then I went and spoke to the guy who was working at the petrol station to ask him if it was all right to leave it there overnight so that I could just go home and sort it out tomorrow. And he told me that he knew the guys that had helped me out and they'd already spoken to him, and that was absolutely fine. I left my phone number and everything with them just in case I was causing an obstruction. But honestly, if they had rung me up and said, you are now causing an obstruction, there wouldn't have been anything I could do about that. So I don't know why I did that. I then had to call a taxi to get me home, to pick me up from the petrol station. After I'd reassured them that I would be fine, my two guardian angels left. And I only had to wait a little while for a taxi, but it was quite embarrassing waiting for the taxi as well, because, and I didn't tell you this bit yet, when I was getting ready to go to Pole this particular day, I thought, why do I always get fully dressed and then waste my time when I get to class getting changed there? If I just go there in my Pole clothes, I won't have to get changed when I get there. And after all, I'm only going to be in the car. So I ended up at a situation where I was standing waiting for a taxi on the grass verge next to a main road in a pole top and a hoodie that wouldn't zip up. And everyone started honking at me then as well. And that's a very different tone of voice with the honking, that was so embarrassing. And from now on, I will always get fully dressed before I go to pole class, even if it means robbing 5 minutes out of my lesson at the beginning so I can get changed, because I'm never putting myself in that situation again. Oh, it was so awful. Anyway, I got my taxi home. He asked me why he was picking me up from a petrol station. I told him I broke down and he immediately started telling me that he sells cars, and I was just thinking, I cannot deal with this right now. I can't deal with the hard sell right now. But I said to him, you should leave me your card. And he did not. So maybe he wasn't trying to sell me a car. Maybe he was just making conversation. I don't know. But anyway, I got home and realised that I have a 2-hour root canal for the next day, which I have to go to around sorting out recovery for my car and all that sort of business. And I managed to do it. Now, I've probably mentioned in a previous video, I haven't done a full video on it yet because I don't really know how I would, but I used to have really, really bad dental phobia, like really, really bad. I used to have to be sedated just for a checkup. I used to have to be very heavily sedated to have something like a filling or something like that. But over the last year or so, maybe, I have been working with a dentist who really took the time to understand what it was that I found scary. She really makes the time to make sure that I feel in control of the process, and she checks in with me regularly throughout whatever she's doing. And I had root canal with her yesterday. I've never had root canal before, but it was absolutely fine. It's something that I'd heard so many horror stories about, and everyone said was going to be awful. And the worst bit was that I got a really dribbly chin from where I had this plastic thing over my mouth. But anyway, obviously that went all a bit wrong as well, but luckily it didn't go wrong in my mouth. Like while she was drilling, the motor of the drill broke, and then they got a new motor, and then that didn't fit the right files, and then the chair was making weird noises, and then they couldn't get the giant comedy blowtorch that they needed for some reason to get started. That didn't go in my mouth either, but I'm still not entirely sure what it was that they did with it. Anyway, all's well that ends well, and that's kind of my point. You see, I could have been complaining a lot about that 24 hours. That was a lot to deal with in 24 hours. Okay, I had my car break down, I had to pay out for towing, I had to find somebody to tow my car, I had to organise with the mechanic for it to be there, I had my 2-hour root canal, and it would have been very, very easy for me to just be feeling really sorry for myself and saying what a terrible, terrible day it was and all that sort of business. But actually, I chose instead to focus on the positive things that happened during that interaction. So what actually happened through that day was, my car broke down and I had the presence of mind to be able to push it out of being anybody's way, and I knew what to do as my next steps. I stayed calm. Then, when I was driving home, my car failed again. I didn't panic. I took my deep breath, and everything was okay. There will always be a kind stranger around when I need one, apparently. This is the 3rd time that an old Irishman has just rescued me. And I'm starting to think that they're my guardian angels now. But it seems like whenever I'm really panicked, somebody is always there to help, and that is such a positive thing. And it was unpleasant having a 2-hour root canal, but I'm so proud of myself about how far I've come with that. And so over the last 24 hours, I have learned that I can cope with these situations. Things can go off plan and go wrong, and I will just deal with it. I can adapt to these things. I can stay calm under pressure, and I can handle an emergency situation. And if I can't handle it completely on my own, there's generally somebody around to help. Now, I could have chosen instead to focus on the people that weren't helpful, the people that were honking at me and all that sort of business, and I could focus on how much the root canal was painful to get the injections, or how much it'll cost, or anything like that. But I would just rather focus on the fact that there are always nice people around, and that when something bad happens, I got it. I can handle it. It's all good. I'm adulting over here. So my 3 main lessons from that were: always get fully dressed before you drive somewhere, because you don't want to end up on a grass verge in pole gear. Always check your emails before you leave the house, especially if there is a chance that something that you will be going to has been cancelled via email. And finally, that if you have RAC or AA or some other kind of breakdown cover included in your insurance, it would be a darn good idea to have those contact details on you when you get in the car. I mean, lessons learned wasn't the best experience, but you can always find a positive in anything. Join me on Monday for my next vlog. I will be telling you a story again, but it won't be a real life story this time. I'm going to read you one from one of my books because it is World Book Night, and I will tell you all about that next week. If you can't wait until then to see me again, I do understand. I'm pretty awesome. I will be here every day in your shorts, letting you know what I'm grateful for, taking one of those great big deep breaths that I now have decided fix everything. And I will also be here, assuming that I haven't killed it, on Tuesday to check in with Dave, my little terrarium. Until then, you have yourself a magical week.